So hello, and this is part two of central banks. Now, as I was videoing the first part, I could hear unfold in my mind the complexity of the discussion or the explanation, although how it really does work can be explained in a sentence or two, but that probably doesn't give the explanation of how it really works. Also, in my last video, the part one, in error I mentioned the voltage equation. that I used it as an analogy for quantitative easing, and I think I repeated myself, but I've put a correction below. Anyway, in part one I used the basic voltage equation as an analogy of what a central bank does that they don't tell you in a PhD economics course. So that's why I mentioned that, because what a central bank actually does, where does money come from, what determines how much money they print, is absolutely fundamental. But in an economics or politics education course, they literally say to a PhD candidate that it's not really of consequence what a central bank is doing or where money comes from. So I find that, once again, absolutely amazing, because in my book, in my experience, in my education, the origin of a thing, where it comes from, is absolutely fundamental to understanding how it operates, how it works. So this simple thing that doesn't appear in an economics PhD course tells me one of two things. Number one, there is a hidden agenda. Number two, something is being hidden, and hey, if I'm wrong, please do correct me. I've had many conversations with professional academics, professional economists and politicians, and I've asked them to correct me, and to date, right now, no one has actually come back with an answer to that question. So I think we can assume, I don't want to sound confrontational, but what we can take from that is there is something to be explored or discovered a little more further than where we've got to. So to recap, in my first part, I started frameworking the explanation of how a central bank works, and what I'm trying to do is actually offer an explanation that a layperson, a 16-year-old, would understand without being specialised in this area. I always like to take a complex subject matter and make it as easy to understand as possible, as to provide the bite-sized chunks to enable you to understand it. Now, I do know, and I apologise, that a lot of the time I can waffle, and that's by accident. But really what I'm trying to do is create the framework of understanding so that then I can talk about a subject matter in its component parts and hopefully end up providing that explanation. So in part one, I've really started to explain and provide that framework of reference, but in part two, in this part, I'm hoping to offer my thoughts on how I believe central banks work and why there are problems. Now, straight away, actually also in other videos I have spoken about this, and perhaps I've said it better, but because it's something that we constantly keep going back to and is important, I think it's worth having the conversation again. And hopefully in the near future I am going to be interviewing a financial economy expert and so we will be having this conversation again. But I wanted to get the understanding of central banks, how they really work in these two videos, if you like, as a subject matter preference. And once again, I have to caveat it that this is my opinion that I've gained over my years of work experience, because this stuff is important. You know, it could be taken by some people the wrong way. It could be argumentative. It might raise other questions for people that they might find difficult to understand. But all I'm trying to do really is provide some understanding around this business operation, this operation around money, to simply enable people to understand better, or perhaps you know, base a startup company on it, on what this might have done with respect to their learning and understanding. So I really want to just get it clear that I'm really not trying to cause trouble here or strengthen conspiracy theories or anything like that. I'm really wanting to understand how central banks work and what benefit they do to society. So let's start from there. Right. So in the news media, we all hear of the term quantitative easing. The other side of it is quantitative tightening, or money printing, or turning the taps off so there is less money. Now, you might not have realized it, but in the morning when you wake up and get out of bed and then do something, you are actually you are doing something, but you're also starting to engage, or you've already engaged in economic activity. You are either a consumer or you are adding value to something. Now, I know this is a horrible way to view it, because it makes you sound very like a robot or a unit of consumption, really. And in actual fact, you are a unit of consumption, so there's nothing woo-woo about that. You are a thing that makes a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, goes for a run, you put on your Apple Watch, switch on your computer, and just for a moment I'm just going to walk past here. So you are you switch on your computer, and you start to consume stuff. If you're, most things you do actually when you get out of bed, you are using energy, you're using electricity that somebody is paying for. You have breakfast, you use the internet, so all this energy is stuff that's being consumed by you. So you can extrapolate this to understand that, you know, all of us are a unit of consumption. We all consume. Now, in this world that we live in, for that to actually happen, there needs to be a balance of control, or a control mechanism, or a control measurement. And that control measurement is actually value and exchange of value. So this is just man's attempt to understand how we all live together and how we do stuff for ourselves and each other that makes it all fair and reasonable. So that provided the creation, the invention of money. Now, people that have built central banks have understood that, if you like, the lifeblood of a society or a group of people or a country is really this thing that controls and drives them, which is a monetary system, a value of exchange, a medium of exchange. It is the thing that allows people to interact with each other and get what they want, also generate value, so that they can get something else, so that they can live. This is where Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for me, explains human behaviour very, very well, actually. He basically said that once a person has safety and security, a roof over their head, and some food to eat under control, well, then they will become a normal human being. Their behaviour is more through their personality. But what you can't do is remove the necessity for safety and security, shelter and food. Those three things are absolutely fundamental to a human being getting on with life. If you don't have any of those three things, you will be in effect staying alive, and everything is a heightened or, worse situation for you. So you do need to address those things. So you're left with your personality, your ability to do stuff, your likes, desires and ambitions, and you get a job and start to do things. You are paid money for that effort, and then with that money you purchase your Maslow's hierarchy of needs items, which is your home, safety and food, and then you enjoy your life. You live a lifestyle. You buy a car, you go to watch the football, you buy a computer. Now, once again, the reason that I say this, because I know it sounds straightforward and basic, but all this won't happen unless there is a controlling system in place, and I'm going to assert that that controlling system is quite simply money. It is a medium of exchange that we've all got very used to, and that we take on board into our lives, and we make it work for us. Now, the central bankers that built these central banks over the years have understood that if you simply print loads of cash, the cash becomes worthless, and also people stop working. Now, on the face of it, that might not be that might not be obvious to understand why that happens, but sure enough, that's exactly what happens, and it's been illustrated many times in African countries. Many countries have built their own central bank. They've started printing money, and sure enough, the thing fails, spectacularly fails, and then they've ended up adopting the dollar currency once again. Now, that is the case point. That right there offers all the explanation that anybody needs to understand how a central bank works, why it's there, and why it works. Now, to control it working, because one of the things that you need from a central bank is, and I've mentioned it before, is control. Now, is the control there to hurt people? And no, it's not. It's just a thing that makes the central bank work. But remember, to make a central bank money-based system to work, you need two things for it to happen. Number one, lots of people to need to use it, to want to use it. And number two, the ability to force the use of it. That's the only thing that you need to make a central bank currency work. Now, if there is too much money in society, money starts to become worthless. Now, this is a consequence of inflation. So you don't want to have too much money in society, because that won't work either, because you still want people to want to go to work and do their job. Because if, when you go to work, if the job that you do is paying you less money, there is no incentive for you to go to work and do that job, because by the time you've got home, the money isn't worth what it was worth in the morning. Right, so you want to avoid that. Now, if you stop printing money, the money that's in circulation actually starts to attract value, because it's finite. So a banana one day will cost 10 pence, and on the next day it'll cost 9 pence, and the day after that it will cost 8 pence, because as the world turns, as population sort of increases, as our production systems become more productive, as we make more stuff, there's actually more stuff attributed to those products. Hence, the strength of the currency will actually start to become stronger against goods and services because no more money is being created. Now, what I've just explained is exactly why we have quantitative easing, which is money printing, and quantitative tightening, which is lowering money printing but also increasing interest rates. Now, I don't know if people can get that or understand that. And what has amazed me many times is that so many people who you think would be qualified, i.e. that they're actually professionals in the economic and or politics environment, don't seem to fully understand what I've said in the last few minutes, that they don't get it. Hence the comment to undergraduates that money is not really of any consequence whilst you're doing your PhD or your economic and politics qualification. Just assume money is there and it works. That's literally what you are told in a PhD course. So what I've done is I've deconstructed that element and actually focused on right. So money is the thing that has value because the amount of it in circulation is controlled to a large degree. People demand it because they want to buy a mortgage and food and a Tesla car. That gives the money value. They also understand that over time the money will start to lose its value because they understand that more money will be printed and more money will be fed into the economy. Now, most people will simply sort of know that anyway. They won't fully understand it, but what they will do is accept it, because at the end of the day they've been able to pay their mortgage, they've been able to pay their rent, they've gone home, they've flicked on the kettle, they've had a cup of tea, and they've gone to bed feeling okay, knowing that in the morning that situation will last for a while, but they will have to go back into the factory, the office, or the mine and do some more work so they can meet those payments at the end of the month. Now, people in the finance industry, most people that I've had conversations with, that I engage with, will be able to articulate an understanding around this stuff. They will even say, yeah, this is how it works. It's not fair, but it's fair enough. And if you're fortunate and if you're fortunate and you work hard, you will simply earn more of the stuff that you want, so you can buy a new car, a bigger house, and you can have a quality of life that you will accept. Right? They're going to articulate that. But when you say something like, hold on a second, who owns the central bank? Who's actually making the decisions to print more money or not print more money? What's going on? What about the people that own the central bank? If they're just printing money, do they simply pay themselves and they realise that they've printed the very thing that they need to then buy a house and a car? Or, how does that all work? Now, this is where it gets very muddy, because some countries will explain that the central bank is owned by government, and the government knows what it's doing, and it's just there because the government put it there. And now, when you want to dig a bit further, they'll send you some documents that indicate that's the case, but it's very hard to actually meet these people and talk to them about it. Although they always have a PR person, they always have somebody around that can, offer you these verbatim, vanilla retorts to these questions. There will be an understanding. But many people are left with this feeling or this understanding of, no, that doesn't seem the case. It looks to me like someone actually owns these central banks. Now, you could arrive at the thought that, okay, fair enough, someone's had to project manage the thing being built, they've had to understand the governments, they've had to understand how it needs to be governed. These institutions are very important. It's how the world works. You know, they have to be run correctly and fairly, and an awful lot of effort has to go into making the thing work, because a country is dependent on it. The safety and security of society is dependent on it. Every person's mortgage is dependent on it. The government, society, they're all dependent on the central bank working, and it's not easy. So, you know, right there is a very good explanation of, you know, sometimes you don't need to perform a witch hunt, because you understand that the group or the organization or the body of people is there, and on the whole they're doing a good job, because it's really flipping hard anyway. And when you take into consideration that some countries have these stable central banking systems, and you compare them to some of the central banking systems that have existed in some African countries and other countries, you know, are shockingly terrible and do nothing but bring, you know, an unfortunate circumstance on people, on their citizens. So this is why, you know, I preface and I always say, you know, this isn't a witch hunt, this isn't woo-woo, this isn't conspiracy theory developing stuff. What I'm trying to do is share my points of view on how I believe and understand central banks work, because on the face of it, so many people don't really know how they work. So many people don't understand how they work, and to a large degree many people are simply told they are just there, central banks are just there, money's just there, it works, stop asking questions. And my point is that doesn't seem totally fair to me. But my caveat right here is there is the possibility that what we have is the best of a bad bunch. It is possible that to achieve this society control, if we didn't have a central bank, there would be something else providing, controlling this value of exchange, and it could be much, much worse. Now, I think I've said something similar to this in other videos, but in this video I'm trying to boil it down. Okay, so we're now in July 2022, and interest rates are constantly mentioned, increasing prices are constantly mentioned. We all seem to be surrounded by economic doom and gloom. Now, this applies to the United Kingdom and the US, so that means it applies to the whole of Europe and all around the world. Each country has its own plus points and its negative points and its own challenges. Those challenges might be different in other countries. I'm thinking of China and the United States there. China do some things much better than the US, and vice versa. There are some negative things there that the US does very well and the other way around. So I think we understand that, but what I'm really wanting to do is have this focus on money. Is it really being managed to the best that it can be? Is it fair? Is there a fair system? Is the finance industry fair? Is its relationship with a central bank fair? Now, I'm going to assert here that it's fairish. It could be fairer. And going around the world in various countries, the amount of fairness is going to change. Some countries are going to be more fair than other countries. You know, it is difficult stuff to talk about globally, because once again, I'm not wanting to victimize anyone. I'm not wanting to fuel conspiracies. I'm not wanting to point the finger, because that actually is not what I'm about, and it's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm hoping is that there is some value in this understanding. Pause just for a second. I seem to be in the middle of a, of a run. Lots of people are running past me, so there's obviously a community run or something like that. Anyway, so back to this video. So I've mentioned, well, I've raised the possibility of the fairness of a central bank. I've raised the possibility that if it's not done properly, it's very, very bad news for everyone. Things like interest rates and quantitative easing are the things that allow a central bank to control the usableness of a central bank. So we don't want to be simply discarding these things as a negative. We want to understand why they are there and why they are important. Because you can bet your bottom dollar that interest rates are incredibly important. And if we're all struggling financially at the moment a little bit, that, you know, that might be necessary for the bigger good. If we don't increase interest rates now, we could create more trouble for all of us into the future that will greatly destabilize the central bank currency, and it could make life much worse. So one of the points I'm making is, rather than get frustrated, angry and cross at what we understand to be going on in the world, we have to understand why that's going on in the world. Is it really the case that there are a bunch of people that simply want to control and own everything and want to hurt everyone, and they have a master plan to treat everyone like a sheep and control everyone? Or are people simply in the right place, doing the right thing, doing the best of their ability to make society work? I'm going to assert that it's really difficult, and I'm going to assert that there are many challenges that the general public are not aware of, and issues like safety and security, water and food security are massive issues, and we're simply not being told enough about these things to help people understand why we have an economic system and policy the way that we do. Right. So so what I've been doing in this video so far is offering this conversational framework of reference to understand the importance of a central bank. And what I'm saying is we have to just go a little more steady around wanting to criticize and reform things. We have to understand exactly what that thing is doing, and measure the effectiveness, which is going to be very hard, you know, before we're trying to make improvements. So I am going to assert that that central bank policy is probably one of the most important social policies that we are really unaware of. It's right up there with defence and safety and security. In fact, I would say it's even more important because defence, safety and security actually look at economic policy to strategize their own plan of action. I would say that economic policy outranks a country's own military policy. So, I mean, this is very, very serious. In fact, I would say that economic policy drives absolutely every other government policy that controls society. So, you know, we're going right up the tree there. We're right at the very top. Now, where I'm wanting to get to is the central bank's relationship with the finance industry and what the finance industry is doing, because I do want to separate them. Now, even though they are connected, to make my point, I'm not sure that it is helpful that I offer them both as the same thing, because number one, I'm not entirely sure that they are the same thing. And well, from a functional point of view, they are definitely not. But a central bank, the way that you can view it, is a very important industry that is required for society to function, full stop. Now, the finance industry, I believe, is a different thing and does a different thing. And I am a person that believes that the finance industry that we have today the way it's set up today, is actually really is causing us more harm than good. And I do want to separate it from a central bank, because if you were to perform a witch hunt, you're definitely going to find a lot more meat and a lot more witches in the finance industry than you are a central bank. Now, some people might claim I'm wrong there, but let's just take that on board as a framework of reference in which I make my point, which is, if a finance industry is set up in a way that it is allowed to access all the new freshly minted money, is allowed to then sell that money at interest and profit anyway, then because of its power of influence and control, it's able to buy people and buy companies, simply obtain assets that create wealth, to do something that the general public wouldn't be able to do. Long story short, I think we can all see that what that's actually going to do is create inequality. Not simply make inequality worse, but actually create inequality. Because it's literally the opposite of economic theory that we all seem to be subject to at university. And that capitalism creates this trickle-down economic effect where we all benefit. Now, there are some arguments that works, but hold on a second, I'm just going to get by here. What an investment bank, if you actually measure it on a spreadsheet, does, its position of power enables it to take all the value-creating organizations and people in society, give them the money that they need, with a net result removing that opportunity from everybody else. Another measurement is job creation, or jobs being taken away. What an investment bank related third party, what the finance industry will do is actually transfer wealth from those who are already wealthy, and this is probably proportional. It will simply take wealth that's in poorer people anyway, and it will give it to those wealthier people. I mean, the irony is unbelievable. I'm just going to pause for a moment. What I realized is chatting outside, you're surrounded by people. So what the finance industry does is the exact opposite of what the economics industry claim it does. It literally creates inequality. It lowers the number of people who have absolute control. It also reduces the number of companies that have control over big infrastructure companies. And ultimately, it is an inequality creator. That's what I'm going to assert. And this is because of its relationship with central banks, how money works, in turn, what the finance industry has become and how that works. Essentially, what the finance industry is doing today is it's transferring literally wealth from poor people to wealthy people. The exact opposite of what you think it might do, and the exact opposite of the mantra that you find inside educational institutions. So this is not a good thing. The reason that people might not be already aware of that is because they're so buried in the mechanics and the politics and the system, that looking for this, it might not be your job description or what you want to find anyway. What you're more bothered about is looking at a business, identifying its value build proposition, and then working out how you can buy it, because you know that in the long run, the business will be worth much more than what you paid for it. And so whether or not you are creating inequality is irrelevant to your job description and your bonus. You're going to do it anyway. But what that does, And this again is what capitalism does. It simply provides a mechanism that allows the investment community to make poor people even poorer because of basic economics. And this is the massive problem. Now, I suppose this might be a little disjointed because at the end of this video I've got to this point about inequality, but I actually want to use it as a backdrop to the explanation and the understanding for the very thing that it seeks to obtain and control anyway itself. And this is why it's something that needs to be looked at very carefully, needs to be understood very carefully, and policy around it needs to be so well understood. The way it's measured needs to be so understood, because this thing is the thing that controls society. It will determine whether society lives or dies. It will determine whether society will thrive on the world stage, will have a healthy economy. And this is why it's very important. My assertion is that it's not fair. My assertion is that it has been set up. It creates inequality, and ultimately the risks and challenges of it being destabilizing are very real, if not we're already experiencing it today in society anyway. And so this is where our focus should be. Anyway, this is part 2, and I think I'm going to leave it there. It's lovely and warm here, and I think I've been going on about half an hour, and I'm aware that, you know, I might be boring some people, so I do apologize about that. I do hope everyone is well. I hope there's something in this video that helps people understand what the points I'm trying to make, and use it as a framework of reference in which to look for something that makes all our lives better. There will be more videos about this subject, and I hope to get them more focused and more accurate. And at that, I'm going to say goodbye. I hope everyone is well, and I hope to see you all again soon.